Now available, paperback and Kindle Unlimited, ISIS, the main event. It's carnage inside of a steel cage when the goddess next door steps in the squared circle with the beast from the boss in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, the main event, paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Is World's End the beginning of the end of AEW? I pose that question because after watching clips of World's End, it looks like that title may be apt as related to foreshadowing the beginning of the end of All Elite Wrestling. Now on December 30th, AEW decided to host its final pay-per-view of 2023, but after watching many of the uninspired and disastrous matches of World's End, this entire pay-per-view basically shows a foreshadowing of the beginning of the end of AEW. Now, AEW's World's End was a low point to end the year for All Elite Wrestling, which has basically struggled ever since, I believe, the time that Sammy Guevara won the TNT title from Miro, and has been on a major state of decline, and has been on this major state of decline because Tony Khan just doesn't run AEW like a business the way Vince McMahon used to run WWE, or the way Triple H is currently running WWE right now. And because AEW doesn't have strong leadership, this has led to the show not focusing on the major Achilles heel of the organization, and that Achilles heel of AEW has been the writing. Now, I have oftentimes said that in producing anything, whether it be a novel, a screenplay, or even a wrestling match, everything starts with the script. And when it comes to the way AEW books matches, it basically is so slipshod that it's hard to get into the story to care about anything. Because with World's End, we saw no real care for storytelling all throughout the pay-per-view. And because there was no real care for storytelling, what happened was we got a complete disaster of a night filled with uninspired matches and a main event that really didn't pay off as related to the revelation of the devil and the devil storyline, which has basically clunked around and undermined MJF's world title run, leading to that world title run ending on a whimper instead of ending on a bang that could have gotten people excited for AEW on in 2024. Unfortunately, instead of us getting a match that would get us excited between Samoa Joe and MJF that would get us excited for a Samoa Joe title run, what we got was an anticlimactic match with a revelation that basically set not only Samoa Joe back as related to his world title run, but also undermined Wardlow once again by showing him as being a part of the Devil's minions. I mean, Wardlow basically was on his way to becoming the next Batista if he were booked properly. Unfortunately, Tony Khan has fumbled the ball with Wardlow once again. I mean, this is like the fourth or fifth time he has fumbled the ball with a performer who I believe Triple H would have turned into a star. But this guy, because he just books matches from a fan's perspective and not a business person's perspective, put him in a faction after having him run in solo matches all through the year to try to rebuild his momentum, but stifles his momentum by making him a lackey once more. This is the kind of booking that Tony Khan does that undermines his talent and prevents them from being able to actualize their potential, and has been the big problem with AEW overall ever since, I would say, the days of Miro dropping the title to Sammy Guevara. Now, a lot of people look at All Out 2022 as a major point of no return for AEW, because that's when the Young Bucks, Nick and Matt Jackson and Hangman Adam Page, had a confrontation with CM Punk. And as they had that confrontation with CM Punk after he badmouthed the entire organization in front of Tony Khan during a media scrum, this is where the entire organization basically started, I believe, its road to really starting to decline after the really poor booking after the whole TNT title debacle, because once Miro dropped the belt to Sammy Guevara, what happened was Sammy Guevara showed that he wasn't really ready to hold a title, because after he got the title, what he did on his vlogs was propose to his girlfriend, and after proposing to his girlfriend as related to his real life, he then got involved in an affair with Ty Conti, and what that did was destroy his character, because had he understood why you need to be kayfabe, is you need to have a kayfabe story where you are a character. What happens is that he didn't understand this, and it basically messed up his entire TNT title run and led to things getting cut short because people were booing him and Ty Conti, because most of the housewives really had just soured on him. But that could have all been averted had there been a booker there to let Sammy know that you need to do things in kayfabe so that your personal life isn't mixed in with the ring. And as things are done in kayfabe, yeah, you can have your personal thing with your girlfriend, but then everything as related to the ring is about the character you're playing. That's what a seasoned booker would have sat down and talked to Sammy about, that could have led to him having a stronger TNT title run. Unfortunately, as that damage was done, we had Cody Rhodes trying to come in and trying to save the prestige of the belt. Unfortunately, he couldn't save the prestige of the belt because it had been handed to Sammy and Cody, then Scorpio Sky. And as the prestige basically wore off the belt, this really started to expose the issues as related to the booking in AEW. And there were other issues that were starting to be exposed, like the whole Thunder Rosa situation and her issues with Britt Baker. I mean, the entire organization was coming apart at the seams. And the main reason why the organization was coming apart at the seams was due to one man, and that one man was Tony Khan. Now, Tony Khan was supposed to be the head of AEW. He was supposed to be the one paying the wrestlers, and unfortunately, because Tony Khan is a beta male, what he did was allow the wrestlers to run the organization instead of him running the wrestlers. Now, I go back to the phrase that Gordon Ramsay said to Rock in Hell's Kitchen Season 3, either you run the kitchen or the kitchen runs you. Unfortunately, what happened with Tony Khan was the wrestlers started to run him, and as they ran him, what happened was AEW started to run off the rails, and as AEW started to run off the rails, instead of him leading, he was following the lead of his EVPs, Nick and Matt Jackson and Hangman Adam Page. And as he was following their lead, we were not getting any sort of focus like we did in the first year of AEW, where we had some really tight and solid shows. No, what we were getting was a lot of dysfunction all around, and that dysfunction culminated in a twist with that whole incident in All Out 2022. Now, Tony Khan did manage to try to get the wheels back on AEW with Jon Moxley taking the title from CM Punk, who was never pinned for that title, and managed to get AEW a bit back on track. Unfortunately, the same issues started to plague AEW once more through 2023, and over the course of 2023, we have gone from an all-elite wrestling that has been strong in its direction to an organization that is basically all over the place. And it's all over the place because Tony Khan, while he likes wrestling as a fan, really doesn't have a clear vision for where he wants to take the organization. in most cases with Tony Khan, he doesn't know whether he wants to make a competitor to WWE or if he wants to make something where it's like New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, Tony Khan's big problem is he doesn't understand that American audiences need certain elements for wrestling to work as related to AEW, and one of those elements we need is story. Tony Khan, what he wants to do is just bring out wrestlers, have them show up and do matches, and that doesn't work for American audiences or Western audiences. No, what works for American audiences is storytelling, and storytelling is lacking over at AEW, where we get wrestlers who just show up and they don't get a character to work with, they don't get any character development, they don't get a character transformation arc or a story arc in a lot of cases, and that really makes the action in the ring lackluster because there's no real build-up to make it pay off for a pay-per-view, and that's what everybody's issue was with AEW as related to the main event between MJF and Samoa Joe. There was no real payoff to this Devil storyline, and this Devil storyline basically took AEW straight on a road to hell because there was no real build-up that would make you care about MJF or the title. It didn't help anything that MJF was injured and possibly forced to drop the title due to injury, but the entire thing was anticlimactic, with Adam Cole being revealed as the Devil who was plaguing MJF. But the whole thing that undermined the story was the fact that the story basically had no real organic conclusion, and like the whole Sammy Guevara situation when he got the title, we got several wrestlers sucked into a black hole that had their momentum taken away. I mean, Wardlow is basically, they messed him up once more by having him in with this group. And these other guys in the Kingdom, I don't know who these guys are or if I should care about them because they just came out of nowhere. But this is the kind of dysfunctional storytelling that Tony Khan does that undermines wrestlers and prevents them from being able to actualize their potential in AEW shows, because the big problem over at AEW is the booking, and that's really frustrated a lot of the talent. It's frustrated the talent because they have no structure to the storytelling, no structure to build their matches with, no structure to build up a story into a pay-per-view, and even worse, they don't really have much in terms of characters to develop. That's another thing that's aggravated me about AEW. You've got all this great talent, but you don't develop characters to let us get to know people. No, Tony Khan's whole paradigm is, oh, I'll announce a match, and as the match is going on, some popular former WWE guy or New Japan guy will show up, and we're supposed to know who this is, but it's frustrating because this guy just comes out of nowhere with no real introduction. And it's really annoying because the audience needs that introduction to find out who this is and why we should care about them. And an example of that is shown to us with Brian Pillman Jr., who is now Lexis King. Shawn Michaels did in a fantastic package where he introduced us to this character. And as he introduced us to this character, we had a reason to care because we're getting a clip that shows us, oh, this guy is important. And then he's introduced. Then he comes to the ring. That's how you're supposed to introduce characters, to let us get to know who this is, not go out here and say, oh, this guy, Will Ospreay, he's showing up out of nowhere. That's nice for a person who knows Japanese wrestling, but for a casual fan, we need the vignette to let us know who this is so that we can get to know this person. And as we get to know this person, we have a reason to care. And as we care about this person, we get to follow their story as they're having their matches. And this has been the Achilles heel for Tony Khan, who has gone out here with AEW and wanted to make a wrestling league to compete with WWE, but really shows that he isn't anybody who understands how this business works, doesn't understand that when you're running a wrestling league, you have to give your wrestlers stories, you have to give your wrestlers guidance, you have to give your wrestlers leadership, and you have to be the one who runs the show, because basically the show is running itself, and that was shown at Worlds, and a show that is as bad as I've seen since WCW in 2000. In 2000, WCW was basically an organization that was running itself because there was nobody there to lead it, because Time Warner basically had paid off all the contracts of most of the talent and written it off. And I have to wonder if fans are thinking about writing off AEW after the disastrous booking, because this organization, if it continues on this course, is really in a further state of decline, and the only person who can stop it at this point is Tony Khan, who at this point, I'm seeing him as a guy who just doesn't want to hear criticism, because I've read articles that said he didn't want to hear any criticism. And if you're like that, you're in a bad place. And a lot of beta males get like this, where they want to tune out any sort of criticism because they don't want to hear anyone. But if he doesn't hear anyone, his organization is going to be implode, sadly, like WCW back in 2000, because you need to get a booker. I have been saying this on his Twitter for about 2 years now. I've been saying you need to hire a booker, and these EVPs, I'm starting to see they need to go, because I'd rather just take the money that you give the EVPs and hire a booker, because AEW, as I've seen it, they have the talent, they have the wrestlers, but what they need is somebody to lead the organization and somebody there to go out and create stories around these wrestlers, help them craft characters, because part of pro wrestling is crafting your character, and if you don't have good characters, you're not going to be able to get good stories, and what you're going to get is what you got right now, where you got guys like Switchblade Jay White, who basically Tony Khan brought him in as the next big thing, but did nothing with him, and now he's basically buried, just like Wardlow was buried. Again, quality talent on the roster, but he doesn't know how to utilize it. He doesn't know how to go out here and make things cook, as some people say. He's got the gourmet ingredients, but he's got a diner mindset, and that diner mindset has him serving up crap like he did with World's End. And World's End, basically, it was a complete disaster of a pay-per-view. One of the worst I have seen from the clips. I mean, just terribly bad booking, predictable finishes, and an anticlimactic main event. That's not how you want to end a year. You want to excite people. You want to get them excited. I mean, you crowned a new world champion, and nobody's excited about it because there was no real build. I mean, this is what just shows me the bad state of AEW, because again, Tony Khan doesn't run it like a business. He's everybody's friend. No, there are no friends in business, and that's basically shown by a lot of wrestlers thinking about going to the door and finding a job with Triple H, because they look at this organization and how dysfunctional it is and see it not as an alternative, but as just a paycheck, sadly. And this organization, again, has some great talent, and that great talent is basically being wasted by a guy who is too proud to admit that he can't do everything himself, because right now, as I see it, Tony Khan really needs to step aside, get himself a booker, get rid of the EVPs, and say, oh, you're just going to wrestle for me, and I'm going to get this booker here in, because the booker can objectively assess people's being over, look at their ring work, and assess whether they want to push someone or not. and craft some storylines to develop some of this talent into solid characters that we can get behind, because you've got lots of great wrestlers on this roster, and that those wrestlers could have easily been the superstars they are. I mean, I look at Miro's whole run as the TNT champion. That could have been built into the World Championship. That could have been a higher climax, because you could have had God's favorite champion overthrowing the Devil, and it would have been a much better storyline than the anticlimactic Samoa Joe beats MJF. You could have turned Miro into a superstar, but no, he's on the bottom of the card wrestling Andrade El Idolo in a match that was uninspired, and his character basically got lost when he could have been a bigger star overall had you booked him right. And there were a lot of, again, wrestlers they could have booked better. I mean, the whole card was a complete mess of matches, and you had matches being tacked on. It just was sloppy overall. And when I look at AEW Worlds, and there has to be an end to this crap booking, or there will be an end to AEW. Now, if you want to pick up my book that is a tribute to my love for pro wrestling, which I've been watching ever since I was 11 years old, you can pick up my book, Isis the Main Event, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find Isis the Main Event at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about wrestling, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, Isis, All That Glitters. The Goddess Next Door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The Goddess Next Door takes on Kung Fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.